Something strange is happening in Cleveland because Shedeur Sanders keeps giving the Browns more reasons to believe in him. Yet Todd Monken still isn't ready to make the call. After another strong training camp practice, Monken admitted he's leaning toward a decision, but then added 3 words that instantly changed the conversation. "I'm not there yet." And that raises the biggest question in Cleveland right now. What exactly does Sanders have to do? Because the rookie isn't simply surviving these practices anymore. He's starting to create moments that are becoming harder and harder to ignore. Practice number 15 reportedly gave Sanders another opportunity to separate himself. In red zone work, he completed around 71% of his passes and accounted for multiple touchdowns. More importantly, the throws weren't just routine completions. Sanders was reportedly making tight window throws, working through pressure, and showing the kind of anticipation coaches want from a quarterback operating inside the 20-yard line. That's where the evaluation gets serious. A quarterback can pile up completions in practice, but the red zone leaves very little room for mistakes. Windows close quickly, defenders have less field to cover, and one bad decision can completely ruin a drive. One of the throws that drew attention involved Jeudy. Sanders reportedly rolled to his left, worked around pressure, and delivered a layered pass over defenders toward Jeudy. The impressive part wasn't simply that the ball was completed, it was the placement. Sanders put the football into an area where the receiver could attack it without giving the defense an easy opportunity to make a play. That type of throw is exactly why people around the Browns have been paying attention to his accuracy. And that's where the comparisons begin. Some observers watching Sanders' practice work have compared his ball placement to Aaron Rodgers. That's an enormous comparison, and it should be treated as just that. A comparison, not proof that Sanders is destined to become Rodgers. But the reason the comparison keeps coming up is obvious. Sanders' biggest selling point hasn't necessarily been explosive athleticism. It's his ability to manipulate the pocket, stay composed, and place the football where the receiver has the best chance to make the play. Then came another sequence that showed the mental side of his game. In red zone work, Sanders reportedly identified the defensive structure before the snap, used his eyes to influence a defender, and then found Harold Fan near the back of the end zone. If that description is accurate, the most impressive part wasn't the touchdown itself. It was everything Sanders did before the ball left his hand. Moving a safety with your eyes and then throwing into the space that movement creates is quarterback football at a completely different level. And this is why the debate around Sanders has become so interesting. The conversation isn't just about whether he can throw the football. It's about whether he is processing the game quickly enough to operate an NFL offense. Every successful rep gives Cleveland another piece of evidence. The pressure work has also become important. Sanders has reportedly faced blitz looks throughout camp, and instead of constantly escaping the pocket, he's shown a willingness to stand in, identify the pressure, and get the ball out. During this practice, he reportedly connected with Sampson for a touchdown and continued developing timing with the rookie running back. That connection could become significant if Sanders eventually wins the job. Sampson gives Cleveland another option underneath and in space, and a quarterback who can consistently get the ball out quickly can turn those short throws into major gains. But here's where the story gets complicated. Despite all of these positive moments, Todd Monken still isn't announcing a starter. He said he'd like to have a decision soon, but he also wants to see more football before committing. And honestly, that's the part Cleveland fans are struggling with. From the outside, it feels like Sanders is stacking evidence while the decision remains frozen. But there is another side to this. Coaches aren't evaluating quarterbacks based on one impressive practice. They have to consider consistency, protection calls, checks at the line, command of the huddle, mistakes, film study, and how a quarterback responds when the offense isn't clicking. A few touchdowns don't erase an entire evaluation process. Still, the pressure is building. Because if Sanders continues producing these kinds of practices, Cleveland eventually has to answer the question everyone is asking. How much more evidence do they actually need? And that's where this quarterback competition could get very interesting. The answer may come down to what happens in the next few practices and, more importantly, the next preseason game. Todd Monken has already made it clear that he wants more information before making the final call. That means Sanders now has another opportunity to turn a quarterback competition into a decision the Browns simply can't postpone. And there's another reason this matters. Every strong practice changes the pressure around the entire room. If Sanders keeps making accurate throws against pressure, keeps protecting the football, and keeps showing command of the offense, the argument for giving him the starting job becomes stronger. At some point, potential stops being the story. Performance becomes the story. That's also why the Sampson connection deserves attention. Sanders and Sampson have reportedly developed timing throughout camp, and that could become one of Cleveland's most useful combinations if they end up sharing the field during the regular season. A young quarterback doesn't need to throw 40 yards downfield on every possession. Sometimes the difference is simply recognizing pressure, taking the easy completion, and letting a playmaker create the rest. But Sanders isn't the only quarterback being evaluated. Deshaun Watson remains part of the bigger picture, and that makes Cleveland's decision more complicated than simply asking who looked best during one practice. The Browns have to consider experience, health, contract realities, offensive fit, and long-term plans. That's why declaring the competition over, based on a few training camp highlights, would be premature. Still, the momentum around Sanders is difficult to ignore. The more he plays with confidence, the harder it becomes for Cleveland to keep the conversation centered entirely on what he can't do yet. His accuracy is becoming one of the biggest parts of the discussion. His ability to operate under pressure is becoming another. And his chemistry with young offensive weapons gives the Browns something they have to evaluate seriously. That's where Monken's not there yet. Comment becomes so important. It doesn't necessarily mean Sanders is losing. In fact, it could mean the opposite. If Monken is already leaning toward a decision, then Sanders may have done enough to put himself firmly into the lead. The remaining practices could simply determine whether he removes whatever doubts are still sitting on the coaching staff's desk. And that's the real battle now. Not whether Sanders can produce one spectacular throw. Can he string together strong performances? Can he limit the mistakes? Can he command the offense when the defense changes the look? Can he respond after a bad play instead of allowing one mistake to become three? Those are the questions that will ultimately decide this. The next preseason game could therefore become much bigger than another exhibition. If Sanders walks onto that field and produces another efficient performance, handles pressure, protects the football, and continues showing the accuracy that has attracted attention during camp, Cleveland may run out of reasons to keep waiting. But if he struggles, suddenly the entire conversation changes. One rough performance wouldn't erase everything he's done, but it would give the coaching staff exactly what it has been asking for: more information. That's why this competition is still alive. Right now, Sanders appears to be doing everything a rookie quarterback can realistically do to force his way into the conversation. He's making accurate throws. He's showing confidence under pressure. He's developing chemistry with his teammates. And he's giving Cleveland more evidence with every practice. But the final decision won't be made by social media, fans, or one viral clip. It will be made by the Browns' coaching staff after they weigh the entire body of work. And maybe that's what makes Monken's words so interesting. He didn't say Sanders wasn't good enough. He didn't say the rookie was falling behind. He said he was leaning toward a decision, but he wasn't there yet. So now Sanders has one job. Give him no choice but to get there. Because if the rookie keeps stacking performances like this, the question may soon stop being whether Shedeur Sanders is ready to start. The question could become why Cleveland waited so long to say it.